Wyoming Territory, 1879. The bullet tore through Willow Osburn's ribs just before sundown. The wind howled through the canyon, stirring dust and blood as she fell to her knees behind the boulder, clutching the wound with shaking fingers. The boy she had thrown herself in front of, no more than 20, stared down at her with wide, stunned eyes. "Run, Seth," she gasped, her voice raw. "Go." Gunfire cracked again. Seth stumbled backward, then turned and ran like his life depended on it, because it did. Willow pressed her back against the rock, biting down on the scream rising in her throat. Blood soaked through her shirt, warm and fast. She could smell the iron in it. Around her, the canyon echoed with fading hooves, the outlaws riding off, having mistaken Seth for the older brother they had really come for. She had saved the wrong man. Or maybe the right one. Only time would tell. Quillan Asher arrived 3 days later. He rode into the low Wyoming town of Hearthstone covered in trail dust, eyes sharp beneath the brim of his hat. The letter had come late, scribbled by a doctor's hand. Willow Osburn, shot while protecting Seth Asher. Stable barely. Quillan tied his horse outside the clinic and stepped inside without knocking. The sharp scent of rubbing alcohol and something earthy stung his nose. A girl with sunburnt cheeks was pressed into a cot, eyes closed, hair damp with sweat. "That her?" he asked the doctor. The man nodded. "She is tougher than she looks." Quillan stepped closer. Willow's face was pale, her lips cracked, but her breathing was steady. He stared, something gritty tightening in his chest. He had never seen her before, but she had taken a bullet for his brother. That meant something. That meant everything. Willow stirred, eyes fluttering open. They were the color of dried sagebrush, clear and stubborn. She blinked at him like she was trying to decide if he was real. "You Quillan?" she rasped. "I am." She studied him, then muttered, "You look just like him. But you look like you have seen more fights." He smiled a little. "I have." She coughed, her face twisting. He helped her sit up, slow, careful. His hands were rough, but steady. "You did not have to do what you did," he said softly. "I did," she said. "Because no one else was going to." Quillan nodded. "Then I am staying here until you are back on your feet." Her brow furrowed. "Why?" "Because you took a bullet for my brother. Because I owe you. And because I want to." Willow blinked, unsure what to say. No one had ever stayed. Not her mother. Not her husband. Not the father of her daughter. Her mind went to the small house outside town. To the child waiting there with the widow neighbor who had agreed to watch her while Willow worked cattle contracts. Quillan must have seen something flicker in her eyes. "You have someone?" Willow gave a slow nod. "My daughter. She is 6. Her name is Soraya." He held her gaze. "Then I will help with her, too." "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I know enough." The next morning, he brought Soraya to the clinic. The girl was quiet, with thick dark hair and a stubborn chin just like her mother's. She climbed up beside Willow and curled close, tiny fingers tangling in her mother's hand. Quillan stood nearby, arms crossed. "She is a good kid." "She has had to be," Willow said. He nodded. "So have you." Later, when the girl had fallen asleep beside her mother, Quillan pulled a stool close to Willow's bed. "You married?" he asked. "Once. He left before Soraya was born. Said he had no business being a father." Quillan's jaw twitched. He was wrong. Willow looked at him. "What about you?" "No wife. No children. And you came here for me." "I came here because you were bleeding in a canyon to save a boy you never owed anything to." She looked away. He said, quieter, "And now I owe you everything." By the end of the week, she could sit up on her own. Quillan stayed. He cooked simple meals in the small rented house behind the livery. He took Soraya on walks so Willow could rest. He fixed the broken gate post in her yard without being asked. He never overstepped, never pushed. Some nights, she woke from fever dreams, breath caught in her throat. And he was always there, sitting in the chair by her bed. Silent. Steady. One evening, she said, "You do not have to keep waiting on me." "I know," he said, "but I want to." She stared at him. No man had ever said that and meant it. By late spring, the wound had healed into a scar. She could walk again, slow and careful, and Quillan never left her side. They sat on the porch one evening, watching Soraya play with a rag doll in the dirt yard. The sun was low, gold and soft. Willow's fingers touched the hem of her sleeve. "I do not understand you." Quillan glanced at her. "What do you mean?" You could have said thank you and ridden on. But you stayed. You help. You care about her. I care about you, too. She went still. He looked down. You do not have to say anything. I just needed you to know. I do not know how to trust that, she said, voice low. Men say things. Then they leave. I am not leaving, he said. Ever. She looked at him, eyes shining. He reached for her hand, calloused fingers warm around hers. She did not pull away. I am not here because I feel guilty, he said. I'm here because in all the places I have been, I have never met someone like you. Willow's voice cracked. I was just trying to keep a boy alive. And now you have given me a reason to stay. She looked at him for a long moment, then leaned into his shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her, careful, solid. Soraya looked up from her game and smiled. For the first time in years, Willow felt something she had forgotten how to name. Hope. In early May, Willow began working again, slow and careful. The rancher outside town had offered her a light contract, no riding fence, just helping tend the spring calves and keeping the ledger straight. Quillan walked her there each morning, Soraya nestled between them, her small hand swinging in his. The first time Willow mounted a horse again, she winced but didn't let it show. Quillan stood nearby, one gloved hand on the saddle horn, his eyes steady on her. You all right? He asked. Not asking again, Asher, she replied, jaw tight. Didn't plan to. She exhaled sharply and rode out toward the west pasture. That evening, she found him in her garden, sleeves rolled, turning the soil with a rusted spade. Soraya sat nearby with a blunt stick, poking lines in the dust. You don't have to do that, Willow said from the porch. He didn't look up. You said you wanted corn and squash this year. Ground won't ready itself. I was going to wait till next week. Then we'll plant next week. Just getting it started. She stepped down and walked toward him, the hem of her dress brushing dry grass. You always work like that? Quiet, steady, no fuss. He leaned on the spade, finally meeting her eyes. I learned early that noise don't build much worth keeping. Willow glanced down at the upturned soil. You learned that from your father? No, from being nothing like him. She didn't press. Instead, she reached for the water pail and ladled a drink into a tin cup. When she handed it to him, their fingers brushed. He drank, then passed it back. You ever think of leaving this place? I did once, she said. Before Soraya. Thought maybe I'd go to Denver. But then I looked at her and knew I wasn't going to run. Not anymore. He nodded. That's why I trust you. Her brow lifted. You trust me? I do. Without question. She went quiet, unsure how to carry that kind of certainty. Later that night, she found him on the porch with his boots off, one arm draped over the back of the bench. She stepped outside, a quilt over her shoulders. I keep thinking about how it could have gone, she said. He looked over. What do you mean? Seth was just a boy. If I hadn't stepped in, you did. That's what matters. She sat down beside him. Do you ever think about what you'd do different? Only one thing, he said. I'd have come sooner. She turned her face toward him. Why? Because I wasted too many years thinking the trail was enough. Then I got here, and it wasn't. He shifted, resting his hand on the bench between them. She laid hers beside it, barely touching. He didn't move, didn't speak. That quiet stretch between them, not heavy, just full. A freight wagon passed on the road outside town, the driver singing low to his team. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once and fell silent. Willow whispered, I don't know what to do with someone like you. Quillan's voice was rough. You don't have to do anything. Just let me stay. She didn't answer, only leaned her head against his shoulder. He stayed still as stone, but his breath deepened. Inside, Soraya murmured a dream and turned in her sleep. And outside, beneath a sky thick with stars, Willow Osburn let herself rest her heart against something solid for the first time in years. The rain came late that spring, slow and steady, softening the hard-packed roads and pulling the scent of wet sage into every corner of Hearthstone. Willow stood at the edge of her land beneath the lean-to Quillan had helped her build, watching the clouds drag their long bellies across the sky. She held her ledger under one arm, pages curling slightly from the damp. Behind her, Quillan's boots sounded on the porch boards. You sure you want to ride out in this? He asked. She didn't turn. Got to take the calf count to Mr. Larimore before sundown. He'll be waiting. He can wait till the rain lets up. She looked over her shoulder, her braid heavy with mist. I don't make a habit of missing my word. He crossed the yard without another question, returned with the mare already saddled, his own horse trailing behind. When she mounted, he swung up beside her. They rode in silence along the edge of the cottonwoods, water pooling in the wagon ruts. At Laramore's homestead, Willow handed off the figures and exchanged a few clipped words with the rancher. On the ride back, Quillan broke the quiet. You ever think about building a barn? She tilted her head. Don't have the money. Or the time. I could draw it out. Help with lumber. Why? He didn't answer right away. So this place can hold what matters when the next storm comes. She shifted in the saddle. I'm not used to this kind of help. I don't expect thanks. I just want to see you with less weight on your shoulders. She looked at him, rain threading through her lashes. And what do you want for yourself? He stared ahead, jaw tight. Peace. A place to put my hands to good work and not have to ride out come first frost. Willow's voice was low. You think you'll find that here? I already have. They didn't speak the rest of the way. Horses splashed through the puddled road. Wind stirred the trees like a quiet breath. That night, after Soraya was asleep and the fire burned low, Willow found Quillan in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, mending the leather strap on her saddlebag. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. You never said what made you leave your last place. He kept his eyes on the thread. Didn't have enough of a reason to stay. And now, he stopped. Now I do. She stepped forward, her voice steady. What if I'm too used to doing everything on my own? Then I'll be patient. I'm not here to take anything from you, just to stand beside it. She picked up the tin cup on the table, turned it in her hands. I don't know how to let someone stand beside me. He set the saddlebag down, wiped his hands on a clean rag. You don't have to know. You just have to try. She didn't answer, but her hand brushed his arm as she passed him on the way to the door. He didn't move, just watched her go, the faintest pull of breath in his chest. In the days that followed, they worked without unnecessary words. She repaired the chicken coop. He patched the roof. Soraya helped Quillan plant squash seeds in the garden, her small fingers pressing them into the earth with practiced care. One evening, while Willow was folding linen on the porch, Quillan stepped out of the barn with a lopsided grin. Got a surprise. She raised an eyebrow, but followed him anyway, past the corral and into the lean to where a new door stood hinged and painted. Inside sat a handmade cradle, smooth pine, no nails, just pegs and patience. Soraya stood beside it, proud as anything. Willow's breath caught. Why would you? You said she never had one. Her eyes stayed on the cradle. I didn't think you were listening. I always am. She reached out, ran her fingers along the curved edge. She's too big for it now. Quillan nodded. But maybe one day she won't be the only one. The silence drew long between them. Willow turned to him, one hand still resting on the wood. You sure you want to build a life with a woman who's already had to survive most of it alone? He met her gaze. I want her because she survived, and because she's still standing. The porch light flickered behind them, wind lifting the edge of Willow's sleeve. She stepped closer, voice low. Then I guess we ought to start making room. Quillan took her hand, rough palm closing around hers. And for the first time in years, she didn't flinch. By the end of June, the air thickened with heat and the fields behind Willow's house stirred with tall grass, gold-tipped and humming with bees. The worst of her healing was behind her, and though a stiffness still pulled across her side with sudden movement, she'd learned how to work around it without drawing attention. That morning, she found Quillan sitting at the workbench he'd built beside the garden fence, shaping lengths of cedar into fence spindles with slow, deliberate strokes. She leaned against the post beside him, arms folded, watching the curl of shavings fall to the ground. Mr. Durley passed through town yesterday, she said. Said he's looking for help getting his hay in. Quillan didn't look up. You thinking of taking the job? I told him I'd think on it. She paused. He offered Soraya a spot to help with the hens. He set down the draw knife and brushed the sweat from his brow with the back of his wrist. You trust him? I don't trust most men who smile too easily, she said. But his wife's got a spine. She'd keep things fair. Quillan picked up another length of cedar. If you want me to ride over and see the place first, I will. I can look after my own. Quillan, I know you can, he said, but I'm not here to take over. Just to make sure you know you don't have to do every damn thing alone. She watched him a long moment. I'm still learning how to let you do that. You're doing just fine. Later that afternoon, They walked together into town after tying the mare by the general store. Soraya ran ahead toward the mercantile, where the owner's boy was stacking crates out front. Willow and Quillan kept to the side of the road, boots kicking up soft dust. "You ever been to the coast?" she asked, glancing sideways at him. "Once. Oregon, long time back. It was colder than I expected. And louder." She nodded. "I used to wonder about it. Thought maybe I'd see the ocean one day." He slowed his steps. "You still could." She gave a half shake of her head. "I don't know what people like me do at the ocean." "They listen to it," he said. "Same as anyone else." When they reached the store, Soraya was already inside, nose pressed against the glass jar of rock candy. Willow stepped in after her, while Quillan waited outside, leaning against the post with his arms crossed, eyes watchful. A few minutes later, a familiar voice rang out from the porch across the street. Clay Moran, a ranch hand from a spread north of town, stood beside a hitching post, grinning too wide. "Well now, if it ain't Willow Osburn, still dragging around half-dead strays." Willow stepped onto the boardwalk, her jaw set. "Not your business, Clay." Quillan straightened slowly, his boots silent on the planks. "You got something worth saying? You'd best say it right." Clay's smile faltered. "Just making conversation." Quillan kept his eyes steady. "Then make it with someone else." Clay spat into the dirt and walked off down the street, his boots loud in the quiet. Willow looked at Quillan. "You didn't need to do that." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." They didn't speak again until they reached home. Soraya ran ahead, tumbling through the tall grass toward the back steps. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the porch. Willow set her basket down and turned to him. "You're not scared of much, are you?" "I've been scared of the right things," he said. "Just not men like that." She hesitated. "And what are the right things?" "Losing something before I've had the chance to hold it proper." She took in the quiet of him, the way his words never came fast, but always landed true. "You're not just here out of owing anymore," she said. "No," he said. "I stopped counting debt the day you let me stay." She stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth rising off his skin. "I want to know what it's like," she said quietly, "to be with someone without waiting for them to walk away." He brushed his thumb against her cheek, slow and sure. "Then let's find out." The light shifted, and she leaned into him. This time, she didn't keep space between them, and neither of them looked back. By mid-July, the wind shifted and the world smelled of dry pine and warm dust. The hay came in heavier than expected that year, and Willow signed on to help the Durleys for 2 weeks, mornings only, while Soraya helped their eldest daughter gather eggs and sweep the porch. Quillan took to splitting wood in her yard in the early hours, stacking it neat by the back door. When she came home around midday, her shoulders tired from lifting and sorting, there was always something waiting, fresh water drawn, bread cooling on the sill, the porch swept clear of leaves. That afternoon, she found him kneeling beside the chicken pen, mending a broken hinge. The sun caught in the sweat at his neck. She stepped into the shadow of the coop and set down her hat. "You ever miss the trail?" He didn't glance up. "Sometimes, when the sky's too quiet. But I've never missed sleeping with one eye open." She crouched beside him, her skirt brushing the dry grass. "I used to think stillness meant being stuck. Now I think it might mean you found something worth staying for." He straightened up, brushing his hands off. "You have." She looked at him, the words sitting heavy on her tongue. "Don't get ahead of yourself." "I'm not," he said. "I'm just standing where I want to be." That night, a storm rolled in from the east, thunder soft at first, then louder, waking Soraya just after midnight. Willow rose and found her curled at the foot of the bed, clutching the edge of the quilt. "I heard it," she whispered. Willow gathered her up, carried her across the hall, and knocked once on the door to what had become Quillan's room. He opened it, boots already pulled on. "She gets nervous when it cracks too close," Willow said. He nodded and stepped aside. "Come on in." Soraya curled beneath the blanket on his narrow bed, while Willow sat on the edge, brushing the girl's hair back from her temple. Quillan leaned against the far post, arms crossed, watching the window. After a while, Willow's voice broke the quiet. "You ever think about what kind of father you'd be?" He glanced at her. "I think about what kind I'd try to be. One who stays. One who listens." She reached for the girl's hand, now limp with sleep. "That'd be enough." He stepped forward, crouched beside them. "I'd want her to know she's never alone in anything. Not even fear." Willow looked at him in the dim light, the lines around his eyes softer than usual. You'd be good at it. You'd be better. They didn't speak again. When the thunder faded, she stood, carried Soraya back to her own bed, and came to find Quillan again before dawn. He was sitting on the porch, elbows on his knees, watching the light rise slow over the ridge. I've been thinking, she said, arms folded against the dawn chill, about what it means to let someone in. He turned to her. And I think I'm ready. He stood and stepped close, his voice low. You sure? I don't need to be sure of the whole future, she said. Just that I wanted to be with you. He reached for her hand, and for the first time, she laced her fingers through his without hesitation. They married the following Sunday under the cottonwood tree behind the house, with nothing but a few neighbors and the sound of wind in the branches. Soraya wore a ribbon in her hair and held her mother's hand through the brief, quiet vows. When it was done, Willow kissed Quillan slow and sure, the way someone does when they've chosen not out of fear, but out of hope. They built the barn that fall, one board at a time. Willow handled the ledgers, Quillan took to the animals, and Soraya grew into her own between them, half wild in the fields, half clever in the kitchen, always steady on her feet. The scars on Willow's side never quite faded, but she stopped flinching when the wind changed. Quillan never left town again, not even when a friend from Cheyenne rode through asking after trail hands. He just smiled, shook his head, and said, Already found my work. Years passed like that. The house grew. A second cradle carved by Quillan's hand took its place beside the first. They raised their children beneath wide skies and quiet land, never needing more than what they'd built with grit and gentleness. And at night, when the porch creaked beneath their weight, and the stars came out one by one, Willow would reach for his hand, still rough, still warm, and hold it without fear. Because she'd learned what it meant to be loved the way land loves sky, with nothing loud, nothing sudden, just always.